What drives a person to madness? What makes them crave the darkness? Is it an innate essence of mankind to do wrong? We've grown so attached to the wholesome and virtuous story of the hero that the villain often seems like nothing more than an obstacle to be toppled by the knight in shining armor. And often, that's exactly how villains are written in stories, as obstacles to cross off of the list of the hero's journey to a happy ending. But what if I offered you a different alternative? One that considers that the very same elements that have molded our admirable hero have crafted our dark and complex villain. Is hero versus villain a matter of perspective? Well, I've got 3 tips on crafting exceptionally compelling villains that will get at the heart of all of these questions, and have you crafting bad guys that'll make readers question their own moral alignment. Let's do it. Every villain should have a motive. It doesn't matter how big or small, but your villain should be motivated by something. Whether it's a past event, the state of the world, or revenge, villains need some kind of justification for what they're going to do. Think about it. Every decision that you make, even the most mundane, have some driving reason for why you decide to do it. And villains are no different. Barring the emotionally void sociopathic type, and even they have some motives too, all villains were spurred down the dark path because of something. A story is usually told from the hero's perspective, but villains have a viewpoint as well. They have experiences, relationships, emotional arcs, and these things fuse to form a motive for why they act as they do. And in a villain, it's particularly important to convey a compelling motive because this character is acting directly against the ethos that you've established in your world. Think about the world you've crafted, not the one the hero sees, but the world of those whose perspective is overshadowed by the hero's worldview. Readers see things from the good side, but sometimes considering the circumstances of the villain can act as a powerful reminder that the situations that have elevated the hero are often the same situations that have knocked our villain down to the dark side. Jealousy, inequality, a desire to have what one doesn't, these are all powerful catalysts that can ignite a dark flame and birth a villain. Try to avoid the common trope of everything in life was fine and fair for me, I just like being bad. This approach creates the kind of villain that won't make your readers think too deeply about their character. And of course, if that's your intention, go for it. But there's no overarching dialogue that can continue after the story is over, and because of that, they probably won't wind up being that impactful either. The way I see it, a villain is taking a calculated risk by going up against the character that will have the most plot armor in your story. Giving them a persuasive, driving reason for why will make your story that much more engaging. For the next point, we're going to take a slightly different approach that's not often touched on when talking about how to make good villains, and that is that villains are not just people. They can be things, situations, and forces. When we think of a villain, the first thing that usually comes to mind is a person, a human or a human-like figure. But let me ask you this, are people the only things that have annoyed you or caused you a great deal of hassle and pain? Because for me, it's weather, food, corporations, infrastructures, freaking inanimate objects like my stupid AirPods that automatically connect to my computer and not my phone. Yeah, all of those things are villains to me sometimes. And the bigger point here is that anything can serve as a villain and play the role of an antagonistic force in your story. Even your own hero can be their own villain too, if their decisions consistently negatively affect them and the things and other people around them. Don't let familiarity with the common villainous human limit you from creating a story where the bad guy is actually something non-tangible and non-human. Writing villains like this doesn't eliminate the need for conflict, by the way. Rather, it adds a sort of intangible force dynamic that could raise the stakes even higher for your protagonist. Let's say you're writing a story set in a post-apocalyptic world where the scarcity of resources is the main struggle for survival. In this case, the scarcity itself becomes a villain, constantly pushing the characters to make difficult choices and forcing them into morally gray areas. The environment, the elements, and even the decaying infrastructure can all act as powerful adversaries that shape the story and the character's actions. You can also explore the idea of internal struggles within your hero. Sometimes the biggest obstacle a character faces is themselves. Their own flaws, doubts, or past traumas can manifest as the villain within their own story. This unexpected approach to villainous characters is intriguing because how does one overcome themselves? These are the kinds of killer questions readers may be thinking when you write villains in this way. And the last tip that I think is going to change how you write villains is every narrative arc should have what's called an arc villain. In storytelling, it's common to have a main antagonist, often referred to as the big bad, who poses a significant threat to the hero and drives the overarching conflict of the story. But I think it's also important to introduce an arc villain for each narrative arc within your story. An arc villain is a character or a force that specifically challenges the hero's growth and development during a particular phase or subplot of the story. They serve as a smaller scale antagonist with lower stakes by creating obstacles and conflicts that the hero has to overcome on their journey towards whatever their endgame is. Think of it this way. If the big bad represents the ultimate test for the hero at the climax of the story, the arc villain acts as a stepping stone along the way. They provide opportunities for the hero to face specific weaknesses, confront their fears, or make important choices that shape their character arc. If your hero is, let's say, a young warrior who's training to become the world's greatest whatever, throughout their training, they're bound to encounter different adversaries who become arc villains for specific training sequences or challenges. Each arc villain presents a unique set of skills and tactics, or maybe even personal traits, that the hero must overcome in order to grow stronger and progress in their journey. By incorporating arc villains, you can really elevate your hero's character development. It allows readers to witness their growth in a much more tangible and organic way, and it keeps the narrative engaging with smaller and impactful conflicts throughout the story. Arc villains don't necessarily need to be as grandiose or world-threatening as the big bad. They can be individuals, groups, or those internal struggles that we kind of discussed in the previous tip that push the hero to the limits in different ways. The key here is to ensure that each arc villain serves some kind of purpose in advancing the hero's storyline and contributing to their overall transformation. Well, friends, that's about it. Those are my 3 tips for creating villains that are going to be memorable and really transform your story. I wanted to make this video because I find myself being drawn to villainous characters and I didn't know why. But when I sat down and thought about how I write villains and how I like to write them, it made me realize that the more there is to a villain, typically the more interesting that they are. If you liked this video, feel free to give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. I'm making my own manga called Ye Olde Treehouse, and I'm here on YouTube talking about all of my literary tips and tricks. I really hope to see you in the next one. Bye!